the season's opener at Albert Park in Melbourne. World champion Michael Schumacher had recovered from a barrel roll in practice to take pole position. His teammate Rubens Barrichello alongside on the front row, defending champions Ferrari, starting the season in great shape. But Barrichello slow away from the line, and it was Mika Häkkinen's McLaren second going into the first corner. Juan Pablo Montoya on his Formula One debut took his Williams across the grass. Barrichello and Frentzen were duelling over third place. Frentzen none too happy about the Brazilian's tactics here. Tragedy though on lap 5. Ralf Schumacher's Williams and the BAR of Jacques Villeneuve tangled at 180 miles an hour. The marshal at trackside was unfortunately killed by flying debris from the crash. "52-year-old Graham Beveridge from Queensland died as a result of what was described as a 1 in a million chance. The safety car was in operation for 11 laps before Michael Schumacher could underline that his Ferrari was quicker than Häkkinen's McLaren. Jenson Button's first race for Benetton, but never in with a chance after a stop-go penalty. And on lap 26, Häkkinen's race was over, a suspension failure sending him hurtling towards a high-impact collision with the wall. Montoya, recovering from a poor start, was heading for a points finish when he passed the ailing Jarno Trulli in the Jordan. By lap 34, Barrichello and Coulthard were involved in a frequently frantic scrap over second place. But Montoya's Williams failed after 40 laps. In the closing stages, Coulthard brought Schumacher's lead down from over 5 seconds to under 2, but there was very little doubt about who was in charge of this race. The world champion started the defence of his title with a deserved victory, the 45th of his career and his 5th in succession, 4 short of Alberto Ascari's record of 9 in a row set in 1952-53. But the earlier tragic accident overshadowed all other events in Melbourne.
Well done, Michael. Congratulations. And to the winning constructors.
Unfortunately, we've just been told that the marshal did die, and obviously we're all shocked about this, and we have to look at what is possible from our side, what kind of support we can give, but certainly everybody is very much down for this situation.
Hot and humid in Malaysia with a heavy downpour, always a possibility. Michael Schumacher clinched his 3rd successive pole position at Sepang, and it was a Ferrari 1-2 on the grid again. Giancarlo Fisichella in the Benetton failed to locate his starting position on row 8, so the start was aborted and he was relegated to the back for a second parade lap. This time, Montoya's Williams wouldn't fire up, and he had to use the spare from the pit lane. When the race did get underway, Schumacher made a blistering start from pole, while Barrichello again lost second place before the first corner. Trying to fight back, the Brazilian clipped Ralf Schumacher. He regained position, but left the Williams stranded as the rest of the field went through. Oil on the circuit caught out even the usually unflappable Michael Schumacher, who was followed into the runoff area by his teammate. Barrichello now 10th and Schumacher 11th. The rain duly arrived and most of the cars slid off the track. No surprise that the safety car was employed. Too late though for Juan Pablo Montoya. Adding to the confusion, a pantomime pit stop at Ferrari, Schumacher waiting his turn as the mechanics found the right tyres for Barrichello. Having led briefly, Jarno Trulli fell foul of the treacherous conditions, promoting David Coulthard to first and Jos Verstappen to a surprise second in the Arrows. But the Ferraris were fighting back after their series of mishaps, the only cars on intermediate tyres gambling that the track would dry quickly once the rain stopped. The gamble paid off for Schumacher initially, taking Barrichello, and the acknowledged rainmaster began to pick off the front runners. Then, out of a bank of spray, he attacked Häkkinen. Barrichello followed his lead. Coulthard's resistance was admirable, But once on the drier areas of the circuit, Schumacher was irresistible, and the champion's recovery from 11th to 1st was complete. The other Schumacher was also fighting back after his delay early on, past Frentzen and back into the points. He also overtook Hakkinen and Verstappen before the finish, though he ultimately lost out to Frentzen on strategy. A Ferrari 1-2 at the checkered flag, their 50th such finish in Formula One. Michael Schumacher made it 2 out of 2 for 2001. 6 victories in succession. Who could stop him? 3 races, 3 different continents. In Brazil, the drama began even before the start when Barrichello's Ferrari stopped on the installation lap. He was forced to use the spare. Business as usual though for Schumacher, his 7th successive pole position, and with Ralph alongside him, 2 brothers started from the front for the first time ever. Hakkinen stalled, a potential hazard for those behind him. Michael swept away, Ralph was sluggish, and it was Montoya who was second at turn 1. Disappointment for Hakkinen. 3 races, only 1 point, hardly championship form. The safety car was used for a lap while the McLaren was shifted off the grid, negating the brilliant start made by Michael Schumacher. Montoya took full advantage, aggressively elbowing the leader aside in a manner rarely used against Schumacher, and in an instant, Montoya became a Formula One star. Ralf Schumacher's race, having started badly, was about to get much worse. Barrichello, the hometown boy, determined to make good on his local circuit, collided with him. Barrichello into retirement. Schumacher limped back to the pits while his teammate revelled in leading a Grand Prix for the first time, but not for long. Verstappen into the back of Montoya and the dream was shattered. As the rain came down, Coulthard inherited first place, then lost time when he delayed calling in for intermediates. Michael Schumacher back in front. But Michael Schumacher, not infallible, and Coulthard was able to close right up. The following lap, Coulthard seized the chance as the leaders closed on a back marker, Tarso Marquez in a Minardi. Brilliantly done by the Scot. Now he had to ram his advantage home. The field was thinning out. Kimi Raikkonen's first Brazilian Grand Prix ended on lap 56. Frentzen departed 8 laps from the finish after running as high as 3rd. Eddie Jordan, frustrated. Sean Alesi in the Prost and Giancarlo Fisichella in the Benetton battled over 6th place. Meantime, Jarno Trulli's Jordan and the BAR of Olivier Panis disputed 4th. Nick Heidfeld secured a career-best finish in the Sauber, but Coulthard crossed the line 16 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher for his first win of the season to end Ferrari's remarkable sequence of victories. Coulthard's first win since France 11 races earlier, but who was more pleased, Coulthard or Hakkinen? Six points between them now. Schumacher's invincibility shattered, and even he, it seemed, couldn't quite believe it. Coulthard thanked the weather.
Praying for the rain, because I knew that I'd made some changes to the car with my engineer to help the car for the wet conditions. And, you know, we were getting reports of increasing percentage chance of rain. And I just didn't want to be the one who got caught out again in those conditions.
Europe for the first time. And although the Tifosi were out in force, it was Coulthard on pole for the first time since Germany last year, and the McLaren 1-2 on the front row. Coulthard was under pressure from the start. Ralf Schumacher spotting the gap and charging through to take the lead. Trulli was up 2 places from 5th on the grid. Michael Schumacher was struggling to stay in contention. Montoya and Panis sweeping past him. Steering failure pitched Raikkonen and Sauber into the bank at the Variante Alta as Michael Schumacher continued to struggle. A gearbox problem followed by a puncture forced him into retirement. By contrast, Ralf Schumacher was outclassing the rest. Gaston Mazzacane forced to make a hasty exit from the Prost, and he didn't appear again all season. Montoya's hopes of a first point were dashed, first by a lengthy pit stop, then by overheating, and ultimately clutch failure. The glory was Ralf Schumacher's. Williams winning for the first time since 1997. BMW's first victory since 1986. Good finish, but what a start.
Yeah, I think it was a clean start. Beside that, from there on I was in front. I couldn't even believe it, to be honest. Then pull the gap out. Then after a few laps I thought he was going to go a bit quicker, so I had to push again because I had to watch after my brakes a bit. And from there on it was a pretty long race, I must say. I mean, it took ages, to be honest.
With traction and launch control legalised again, what would Barcelona have in store for the two championship contenders now level on points? 36 pole position for Michael Schumacher. For Coulthard, a place on the second row that soon became 22nd and last after stalling before the warm-up lap. Advantage Schumacher then. But he wasn't immune from the attention of Häkkinen in the other McLaren. Retaining first place became somewhat problematical down to the first corner as Häkkinen tried numerous dodges. Barrichello, meanwhile, clawed his way back past the quick-starting Ralf Schumacher. Coulthard in trouble again. Clipping Fisichella resulted in an early pit stop. Frentzen and Pedro de la Rosa in the Jaguar were out of the action by lap 6. And Ralf Schumacher followed up his win at Imola with a less impressive show here. Lap 43, Michael Schumacher's second and final pit stop. Häkkinen was now leading. Jaguar's interest in the race ended with Irvine's retirement. No points thus far for them. Häkkinen's second and final stop on lap 50. He'd built enough of a lead to be in and out without losing first place. He seemed certain of winning for the first time since Belgium last year. Further behind, Barrichello was in trouble after he'd gone off the track, and Michael Schumacher was reporting a severe vibration on his car. David Coulthard had made up 16 places to 6th when he swept past Nick Heidfeld in the Sauber. But then it became apparent that Häkkinen was slowing. He had a clutch problem. Villeneuve unlapped himself. Schumacher was eating into the lead. Häkkinen was not going to make it. In the end, he was forced to park up half a mile from the finish. And Michael Schumacher picked up the 47th and luckiest win of his career.
Seeing him then retiring just in the last lap, 5 corners or whatever to go to the end, it's shocking because he's really done everything right, and then something like this. I'm sorry for him. I went to see him because it's not the way you like to win a race, honestly, but then sometimes it happens.
Round 6 and another pole position for Michael Schumacher. And another indication that the gremlins in the launch control systems had yet to be ironed out. By the first corner, Schumacher had been overtaken by both Williams. Häkkinen was among those left on the grid. After a spell behind the safety car, the race was back on again. Villeneuve was looking to take Irvine's 9th place, a little too ambitiously. Brake failure forced Ralf Schumacher to give up. Failure to spot a red light in the pit lane led to Jarno Trulli being black flagged out of the race. Up front, Montoya and Schumacher, neither prepared to give an inch, and they both lost out. down to 6th and 7th, with Barrichello leading. Schumacher was able to continue at race pace, working his way back up the order past Raikkonen and Sauber. Montoya, though, was out of it, the victim of a hydraulic leak. After the last round of pit stops, the McLaren of Coulthard was ahead of the Ferraris of Barrichello and Schumacher, and he was strong enough to stay in front, a fact which prompted the issuing of team orders to Barrichello. Move aside for Schumacher for the sake of the championship. He dutifully did so at the last corner. Coulthard, with his second win of the season, moved to within 4 points of Schumacher at the top of the Drivers' Championship, but that wasn't really the talking point. If Barrichello had ever regarded himself as an equal partner with Schumacher, he now knew differently.
Rubens, you were second until the last corner, and then you pulled over to let Michael through. Why was that?
The team has asked me to do that.
Well done to David Coulthard.
Formula One glamour at Monaco, graced by royalty and numerous A-list celebrities. Coulthard's second pole of the season and the 12th of his career, but as at Barcelona, he couldn't start the parade lap and was relegated to the back of the grid. Michael Schumacher took advantage of Coulthard's misfortune and led into Saint-Devote, tracked by Hakkinen. But it wasn't long before Monaco's infamous barriers came into play. Lap 1, Heidfeld in the Sauber. Lap 3, Montoya in the Williams. McLaren's woes continued. Hakkinen slowed down, Barrichello went past. Coulthard was frustrated by Enrique Bernaldi in the Arrows, who didn't have to make it easy for the Scot. The chances of any reward for Coulthard from Monaco, where he'd won in 2000, were very slim indeed. Hakkinen departed after 15 laps with a front suspension failure, leaving his teammate to battle on behind Bernaldi for a mammoth 42 laps as the Ferraris took a stranglehold on the race. Ralf Schumacher was in a solid third and picking his way around the tortuous course well. On lap 30, Trulli's Jordan was a flaming sight for the customers at the Rascasse. And Williams' interest in the Grand Prix ended when Schumacher retired from third after 57 laps. Coulthard, meanwhile, had detached himself from Bernaldi and set the fastest lap of the race en route to 6th. Irvine was heading for the podium and a meeting with His Serene Highness. Lap 78, Ferrari 1 and 2, and Schumacher's 5th win at Monaco. Just one fewer than Ayrton Senna. Ferrari's second 1-2 at Monaco in 3 years. And at last, points for Jaguar.
Yeah, it's fantastic to get a podium, and especially here, you know. To have two Ferraris and a Jaguar on the podium in Monaco's really what Formula One's about in a way.
Back across the Atlantic for round 8 in Canada, Schumacher claiming his 6th pole in the 8 races so far and leading Coulthard in the championship by 12 points. With brother Ralph and Coulthard both anxious to get past in the early stages, Schumacher held the line. He saw off the challengers and soon began to blast away from the rest of the field. His teammate Barrichello overtook Trulli for 4th. Hopes that Irvine would consolidate on that 3rd place in Monaco were dashed when he tangled with Heidfeld on lap 2. Barrichello attacking Coulthard. He coolly moved into 3rd place. His next target, Ralf Schumacher. But switching off the traction control to clear up a misfire caused him to spin. A possible 2nd place became 14th. And his race was over when, trying to avoid Montoya, he went into the wall on lap 20. That brought out the safety car. The debris was scattered over a large distance. Montoya had gone off when in 10th place. Barrichello behind him had no option but to swerve and lost control. On lap 45 out of 69, Häkkinen set the fastest lap of the race and was in the points in 6th place. Ralf Schumacher's ability to run until lap 51 before his pit stop put him in the lead, and with the crowd roaring him on, he drove steadily away from his elder brother. Coulthard's race ended after 54 laps with engine failure after he'd looked sure of 3rd place. Truly went out when lying 4th, 6 laps from the end. So it was Ralf Schumacher, a long shot with the bookmakers at 10-1 to win this race, who claimed his 2nd victory of the season. This one even more emphatic than his effort at Imola. Not least in the opinions of 2 enthusiastic trackside observers. A family affair on the podium, Ralf joined by brother Michael, with Mika Häkkinen securing his first podium finish of the year. Onto Schumacher territory for round 9, the size of the support was quite overwhelming. The brothers monopolised the front row for the 3rd time, Michael having taken his 7th pole position of the season, but it seemed as if that advantage would be lost when his car failed on the way to the grid. When others may have panicked, Michael coolly selected an alternative method of transport back to the pits and took the start more or less as planned. The charge down to the first corner was led by the Schumachers, with Montoya slotting into 3rd and Coulthard 4th. Anything other than a Schumacher victory at Nürburgring would, it appeared, be entirely inappropriate. Having been separated by less than a second for much of the race, the Schumachers came into the pits together on lap 28, a chance for Williams to put their man ahead. But the Ferrari crew were marginally quicker. Michael stationary for 8.4 seconds. Montoya had gone through in the lead, Michael was second. But Ralf made an untidy departure from the pit lane and faced a possible penalty. Pit stops by Coulthard and Montoya relegated them to 3rd and 4th. Montoya's pursuit of the McLaren almost ended prematurely at the chicane. Ralph's chase after Michael was curtailed when he was penalised for crossing that white line at the pit lane exit. Careless mistake after a costly pit stop. 48 laps gone, traction control failure on Frenzen's Jordan. On the last lap, Jean Alesi found himself in the gravel trap, the most experienced driver in Formula One battling with one of the least, Kimi Räikkönen. Alesi had yet to score a point in this unhappy season. Michael Schumacher first again then to increase his championship lead with his 3rd win in 6 years at Nürburgring. The first win by any driver from pole position here since the circuit was revamped. 2nd place for Juan Pablo Montoya, equalling his career best finish at Barcelona. David Coulthard was 3rd. In the title race, Schumacher was now leading Coulthard by the comfortable margin of 24 points with 8 races to go, while Ferrari were 41 points ahead in the Constructors' Championship. It looked odds-on a repeat of the Ferrari double of 2000.
We had a nice race again together, Ralf and myself, until the stop and go. So it was quite an entertaining weekend, and tough weekend as well, because then in the end Jean Pablo was coming and pushing, and so in this respect we're very delighted to have finished where we are.
The French Grand Prix at Magny-Cours, and Schumacher in pole position. But this time it was Ralf. On his 26th birthday he'd taken his first pole, and the first 2 for Michelin since the return to Formula One. Häkkinen's McLaren stalled before the parade lap, the 3rd time he'd failed to complete a lap this season. Clutch failure, the reason on this occasion. The rest had to depart without him. Ralf Schumacher rocketed away from the start, but Michael was struggling to hold on to 2nd from Coulthard. Häkkinen's lot was not a happy one. And another former champion was out after just 5 laps. Barrichello had started from row 4 but was running 5th and capable of improving further, the fastest man on the track. Ralf Schumacher stopped on lap 24. The problem with the right rear delayed him. Michael took over the lead but came into the pits a lap later. Despite a sticking fuel hose, he was underway again and back into the race without falling behind Ralf. While Michael was happy with the balance of his car, Ralf had found his had been put out by the new set of tyres, and the lead increased significantly. More good news for Michael when Coulthard was penalised for speeding in the pit lane. Irvine and Frentzen were disputing 8th place when Frentzen took the shortcut. Irvine in the Jaguar made sure Frentzen knew what was expected of him. With 22 laps to go, Schumacher was back in the lead following his second pit stop. Another Grand Prix victory in the French sunshine looked likely. Montoya retired from 4th place on lap 53 with engine failure. His teammate Ralf Schumacher was up to 3rd, which soon became 2nd when Barrichello came in for his 3rd stop on lap 54. Irvine retired with a blown engine when looking set for 6th. And hard though Coulthard tried, he couldn't squeeze past Barrichello. Michael Schumacher first at Magny-Cours, his 5th win on the circuit in 8 years. Overall, he'd reached 50 Formula One victories, just one behind the record held by Alain Prost. Ferrari had just cause for celebration. Their man was on course for another title, smashing all known records on the way. It was another Schumacher 1-2, this time for Michael, in the right order.
It's the perfect result, as you said before. In Canada we had 1-2 Ralf, myself, and now we have 1-2 myself and Ralf.
Silverstone in July, British fans hoping for a Coulthard win, but again it was a Michael Schumacher pole, the 40th of his career. Hakkinen second on the grid. Schumacher led down to the first corner, but bunching in the pack caused a couple of excursions. Panis in the BAR went well wide and couldn't get back after being jostled by his teammate, and he hadn't been the only one to lose out. Trulli in the Jordan had gone too after contact with Coulthard. Schumacher against Hakkinen, a throwback to the days when the pair were both challenging for the title. At this stage, Hakkinen had just 9 points. Coulthard's race was over on lap 3. After the smoke and dust had disappeared, it was clear that his title chances virtually had 2. He blamed the first lap incident with Trulli for his retirement. Hakkinen proved he'd lost none of his old gusto when he took advantage of a Michael Schumacher mistake. Then Montoya was on Schumacher's tail, and to the delight of the crowd, whipped past him into second. Hakkinen, meantime, had reeled off lap after fastest lap. He was 26 seconds in the lead by lap 20. Montoya led after Hakkinen's pit stop and called in himself on lap 25. Hakkinen and Schumacher were 1 and 2 again. Not the battle the crowd had come to see, but just as thrilling all the same. Ralf Schumacher retired from 4th on lap 36 with engine failure. That promoted both Montoya and Raikkonen. Raikkonen, with 9 points so far in his debut season, was making a good impression. It was the senior Finn, Mika Hakkinen, who came home first, 33 seconds ahead of Michael Schumacher. His first win of the season, and his first since Hungary a year ago. It was a brilliant comeback for Hakkinen after all the trials and tribulations of a difficult season. The McLaren team were delighted for the popular Finn, but not half as delighted as the man himself. Towards the end, he must have been thinking about the heartbreaking moment in Spain when he stopped half a mile from the finish. The celebrations were a mixture of relief and sheer joy.
It feels really good, obviously, after all this trouble that's been going on this year. So it's good to win it, obviously, and particularly here in Silverstone, because trying for English team and English crowd, so we made a great show, you know.
Round 12, Hockenheim. Montoya's first ever pole position in only his 12th Grand Prix was sensational. It was the first Williams front row since 1997, but the Minardis were in big trouble and had to start from the pit lane. Montoya and Ralf Schumacher were away well, but Michael Schumacher crawled off the line. Luciano Berti, coming through from 16th place in the Prost, just couldn't avoid him. Totally out of control, Michael Schumacher's Ferrari was badly damaged too. Schumacher inquired about Berti's health and well-being. It was amazing that they were able to walk calmly back after something like that. Debris littered the track surface. The red flag stopped the race to allow the clear-up to take place. Ferrari prepared their spare car for Michael Schumacher. There was plenty for the marshals to do, and no wonder after an incident like this. Berti somersaulting after the collision with Michael Schumacher, and Bernaldi very lucky indeed. The Prost landing virtually on top of the arrows. Schumacher, Berti and Bernaldi were all able to make the second start, and this time the Williams pair were away well again. But the McLarens and Ferraris were involved too, disputing 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th. Lap 1 at the chicane, Michael Schumacher passed Häkkinen. A collision between De La Rosa and Heidfeld put them both out. It was Montoya leading, Ralf Schumacher 2nd, Michael Schumacher 3rd, as Barrichello challenged Coulthard for 5th. Barrichello was running light on fuel and he had the power to pass the McLaren. Now he was after Häkkinen. Out of the slipstream and round the outside, a daring move paid off. He was up to 4th and after Michael Schumacher. Ricardo Zonta, replacing the sacked Heinz-Harald Frentzen at Jordan, went out on lap 7. Ferrari team leader realised Barrichello had the quicker car and gave way. Some return for the team orders in Austria. After the glory of Silverstone, Hockenheim ended in disappointment for Häkkinen. He retired after 13 laps. Having made his first stop, Barrichello was behind Coulthard again. He soon put that right. Lap 20, and he was back to 3rd. Montoya's pit stop. The crew had to change the refuelling rig, and there was very little chance of his first win after that. Just 1 lap later, and Michael Schumacher slowed. Low fuel pressure causing his retirement. Moments later, Luciano Berti. Less heart-stopping than the first incident, but a bumpy ride nonetheless. Michael Schumacher, an interested spectator of a race that saw the front runners dropping out almost in sequence. Montoya. Then, David Coulthard. McLaren now had nothing to monitor. Schumacher needed the commentary to keep track of it all. It was brother Ralf who survived to take the checkered flag, the second best result in the eyes of the locals. It was his 3rd Grand Prix victory, but importantly, the first ever for BMW engines in Germany. Barrichello came 2nd for the 3rd time this season. And Villeneuve made the podium for the 2nd time in 2001. Behind him, the Benettons of Fisichella and Button had both made up 13 places to 4th and 5th. Ralf Schumacher was applauded by his brother as he made his way round. And the significance of the win became apparent in Parc Fermé. Michael dashed back to add his congratulations. Now, there was a real chance that the brothers could be 1 and 2 in the Drivers' Championship. What animosity had occurred between the two after previous races had now evaporated. And if Michael Schumacher won the next time out, he'd be champion again with 4 races to go. In the Constructors' Championship, meanwhile, Ferrari had stretched their lead to 58 points. Only Minardi were without a point at this stage. An unbelievable day, said Ralf Schumacher afterwards, and that just about summed it up. A splendid atmosphere in Hungary, a massive crowd in anticipation of seeing Michael Schumacher claim the driver's title. He did everything right in qualifying, taking the 41st pole position of his career by 0.801 of a second from Coulthard. Lacey and Frentzen had effectively swapped teams at Prost and Jordan. The start couldn't have gone better for Michael Schumacher. He was away first, tracked by Barrichello, who pushed Coulthard down to third. This allowed Schumacher to build up his lead. Barrichello was playing an effective support role. Irvine was out at the first corner, my mistake, he admitted later. After the round of pit stops, Michael Schumacher was leading, but Coulthard managed to get back out just ahead of Barrichello. But he wasn't able to pull significantly away from him. Big spin on lap 35 left Button in a vulnerable position. The Benetton eventually retrieved without further mishap. A pit stop for Coulthard on lap 54. He was delayed by a sticking fuel nozzle, and that demoted him behind Barrichello again. Barrichello second, David Coulthard third, and points vital for these two, who were also battling over second place in the championship with Ralf Schumacher. Lap 53, and Jarno Trulli was out after a spin. He still hadn't scored a point at Hungary. Häkkinen was doing his best for teammate Coulthard by harrying Ralf Schumacher for fourth. But Schumacher's Williams had better straight-line speed. Frentzen's first drive for Prost ended when traction control let him down. It all left Michael Schumacher to sail onto the line unopposed. His 51st Grand Prix victory, equalling the record of Alain Prost, and it gave him the championship for a fourth time. Barrichello was second, just ahead of Coulthard, but this was Michael Schumacher's day. The figures are quite staggering. 158 Grand Prix, 51 victories, 41 pole positions, 43 fastest laps. He has a contract with Ferrari till 2004, and he's still only 32. He's the first man since Alberto Ascari in 1953 to retain the Drivers' Championship in a Ferrari, and Ferrari retained their title too for a third successive season.
I came here with not such a good feeling for whatever reason. I told to Jean, I'm not sure this weekend is going to be the one it will happen. And then we got pole position, we got the victory. I did obviously equalise 51 with Alan, and I got my fourth championship, so it's a bit too much for me right now to take it.
There were 7 points between Coulthard, Barrichello and Ralf Schumacher going into the Belgian Grand Prix, but it was Montoya with his second pole of the season who beat them all in qualifying. Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who qualified a brilliant fourth for Prost, had stalled. And before the second formation lap, Montoya lost his engine. The poleman went to the back, which left Ralf Schumacher effectively on pole. And he got away well. The Williams leading, Ferrari second and third, and Fisichella came round the outside to fourth place. Villeneuve moved up to fifth. Away up the hill to Les Combes, and the Ferrari of Michael had the beating of the Williams of Ralf. And once past, he simply drove away from him. Behind the front three, Häkkinen was the man on the move, taking Fisichella for fourth and looking capable of challenging Barrichello for third. Coulthard waited for his chance. And then he took the opportunity of passing the Benetton. Now he was up to fifth. But his challenges for second place in the championship were both still ahead of him. Back in the pack, Irvine and Bertie were approaching Blanchimont. He needed only the slightest touch at 180 miles an hour to send the pair of them out of control. The Prost, minus its front wing, headed straight for the tyre barriers. Concern was obvious for the plight of Bertie, who'd survived the incident at Hockenheim 2 races earlier, but this seemed much worse. But amazingly, severe concussion and bruising were the extent of his injuries. Kimi Räikkönen couldn't make the new start for Sauber because of a broken transmission. At the parade lap for the new start, Ralf Schumacher was left on the jacks. the mechanics hadn't had time to fit a new rear wing. He went to the back of the grid, and Michael Schumacher was now effectively on pole. The race now set for 36 laps. Michael Schumacher away, and he led down to La Source. The Benettons had started well, Fisichella up to second, Barrichello third. Button was sandwiched by the McLarens. Button couldn't keep Coulthard at bay, and the Jordans were coming into the picture too. But Heidfeld was out after an altercation with De La Rosa. Michael Schumacher's lead was 7 seconds by the end of lap 1, Fisichella in second place, and even Barrichello couldn't get past him. Then came the McLarens. Montoya into retirement with a blown engine. Remember, he was the original poleman. Barrichello's Ferrari with front-end modifications. After the first round of pit stops, Barrichello was back in 5th behind Häkkinen. But a mistake at the bus stop meant he lost his front wing, hence the emergency stop. Button did much the same thing, but wasn't so lucky. His future at Benetton still unsure at this stage. The McLarens were the stars towards the end of the race. Häkkinen and Ralf Schumacher disputed 4th. Coulthard and Fisichella squabbled over 2nd, settled in Coulthard's favour. Barrichello took 6th place from Alesi in his 2nd Grand Prix for Jordan. Though he was soon back in the points, his teammate Trulli went out with a blown engine with 4 laps to go. Barrichello now up to 5th. Trulli thought that he deserved something. Michael Schumacher first, 52 Grand Prix victories, an all-time record. Coulthard second, Fisichella third, his first podium since Canada last year. But it was Schumacher who appropriately broke the record at Spa, where he'd made his debut and won his first Grand Prix. The last 3 races of the season would simply be celebrations for Ferrari. They had nothing left to prove. The Italian Grand Prix took place in the shadow of the tragic events in the USA. Concern about the track left some drivers wondering if there should be a non-combat period at the start of the race. But in the end, with Montoya on pole for the 3rd time, they agreed to start as normal. Jordan paid their tribute. On the track, Montoya was away from pole. Barrichello and Michael Schumacher were side by side, but Ralf Schumacher looked more eager than his brother. Into the first corner, and Button pushed the Jordan of Trulli into a spin. Fortunately, safely negotiated. Montoya led from Barrichello. Ralf Schumacher lost out to his brother in the Ferrari. The Ferraris carrying no sponsorship. Lap 5, Button again finished early. Of the McLarens, Häkkinen was back in the pack and making little impression. His future was the subject of much speculation. Coulthard was out after 6 laps with engine failure. It was still Montoya leading, with Barrichello in pursuit. By the second chicane on lap 9, Barrichello was through. And Michael Schumacher was in the groove as well. There was lots of work for Montoya to do. McLaren's race ended when Häkkinen retired after 19 laps with a broken gearbox. In the pits, the first Czech driver in Formula 1, Thomas Enger at Prost. Barrichello's pit stops decided the race. The second was only 6.4, but his first had been 16 seconds. Montoya had stopped just once and was leading. The best Barrichello could hope for was second, and even then he had to pass Ralf Schumacher. Lap 47. Ralf Schumacher took the shortcut. He had to give way to Barrichello. But Montoya was 7 seconds ahead. Could Barrichello reel him in? Alex Young, the first Malaysian in Formula 1, found the Minardi a little hot to handle. Pedro de la Rosa in the Jaguar was heading for a career best finish, 5th. And then there was Montoya, clinching his first Grand Prix victory in his 15th race and the first ever by a Colombian in Formula 1. Another South American, Rubens Barrichello, was second and closed to within 3 points of Coulthard for second in the championship. For Montoya, with friends and family there to support him, this was a special moment.
I'm just so happy, you know, and first of all I think I want to thank everybody at Williams, BMW, Michelin. They've done a fantastic job for me and I'm just so pleased with the result.
This was the first international sporting event to be staged in the USA after September the 11th. A highly charged, emotional occasion. Michael Schumacher took pole for the 42nd time in his career and for the 10th time in 2001. Häkkinen qualified second but was relegated to fourth for a pit lane infringement in practice. Schumacher was first away, but Montoya was with him down to turn 1. And the Ferrari proved quicker out of the corners than the Williams in the infield section of Indianapolis. Raikkonen, signed by McLaren to replace Häkkinen during his 2002 sabbatical, was sandwiched by teammate Heidfeld and Trulli. On lap 3, Barrichello went past Montoya. It was now looking good for a Ferrari 1-2. It was looking better for Barrichello when Michael Schumacher led him through to first place. Jean Alesi in his 200th Grand Prix took both Benettons in successive laps to move to 9th. Barrichello's early pit stop dropped him from 1st to 5th. Leaving Michael Schumacher and Montoya to duel over first place. And the Colombian, with his father watching, went in front at Indianapolis. Ralf Schumacher retired, went 8th. And more bad news for Williams. 2 laps later, Montoya slowed down and went out. Häkkinen in the pits after leading the race. Barrichello went first, but he needed another stop. Häkkinen came out second, ahead of Michael Schumacher. Barrichello's second stop. The strategy hadn't worked. Häkkinen was now leading. He'd announced his sabbatical the previous week. What a way to sign off. Irvine was in the points, past Heidfeld for 6th. But telltale signs of smoke from Barrichello's Ferrari suggested that he wouldn't be able to hold on to second place. Trulli was in 5th place for Jordan. That became 4th when Barrichello went out with the seized engine 2 laps from the finish. Häkkinen, 2 days after his 33rd birthday, recorded his first win since Silverstone. 161 Grand Prix, 20 victories now. Michael Schumacher was second, Coulthard third, ensuring McLaren came second in the Constructors' Championship. Trulli in 4th place, but he was about to be disqualified for a technical infringement. Häkkinen says he'll be back, but when and where? The 17th and last round of a long season at Suzuka. Michael Schumacher with his 11th pole of the season and his 43rd in all. He started first, and that's where he wanted to stay, as he expertly blocked the charge from the Williams pair. Around the figure of 8, the champion led from Montoya, Ralf Schumacher, Barrichello and Fisichella. Barrichello needed to win to stand a chance of taking second in the Drivers' Championship. He made his way past Ralf Schumacher for 3rd. Then Fisichella lost the back end of his Benetton. It dropped him from 4th to 12th. Raikkonen, in his last race for Sauber before his move to McLaren, was in trouble. He was hit by Alesi in probably his last Grand Prix. The first race of the season that Alesi had failed to be classified. It wasn't the way he would have wanted to bow out after 201 Grand Prix and a career starting back in 1989. Michael Schumacher steadily built his lead over Montoya. Lap 29 and Barrichello was in for his second stop. Ralf Schumacher, meanwhile, was in for his first. Barrichello lost his engine and couldn't accelerate, Ralph went out over the white line. Comparisons there with Nürburgring. But the excuse was that he was taking avoiding action. Of the McLarens, Hakkinen was up to third, Coulthard fourth. Behind them, it was Barrichello against Ralf Schumacher. Barrichello thought he'd done enough, only for Ralf to take the shortcut again. And he stayed in front. Although Barrichello pointed out the error of his ways. Barrichello eventually went past him around the outside, but he was none too amused. Hakkinen, in his last Grand Prix for a while at McLaren, throttled back and gave Coulthard third place. Some compensation for Coulthard obeying team orders at Melbourne way back in 1998. But it was Michael Schumacher the winner to round off his and Ferrari's season in the grand manner. His second successive win in Japan, and extending his own record of Grand Prix victories to 53. Coulthard's 10th podium of the season made sure of second place in the championship. But 9 Grand Prix wins in a championship winning season are now a record number of points in a career for Schumacher. Almost unnoticed, Mika Hakkinen, the quiet, modest Finn, made a typically low-key farewell, 4th in the race and 5th in the championship. After an appeal at the end of the season, Trulli's 4th place at Indianapolis was restored, so Jordan actually finished 5th ahead of BAR. But Formula One's Man of the Year? Undoubtedly, Michael Schumacher.
That's a great end and a great result for a championship we have achieved to finish off the season for the team, for everyone.
So can Schumacher and Ferrari do the double again in 2002?